study,
and play come together on a Windows 11 PC.
And for a limited time, college students get
The best of both worlds.
Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
Expedia and Visit Scotland invite you to come experience the beauty that awaits in Scotland. The sweep of wild coastlines, quiet lochs, and untamed landscapes. Fresh cuisine that feels rooted in the land. Come experience the kind of stillness that stays with you long after you leave. Plan your Scottish escape today at expedia.com/Visit Scotland.
AI is poised to have a transformative, a remarkable, and unprecedented, choose whatever your preferred superlative is, impact on healthcare in the next few years. And I think right at this moment, we are in the midst of what I would call widespread disruption or creative destruction in the practice of delivery of healthcare. And digital technologies, data analytics, and of course, AI are the central actors in this process. AI has brought us to an inflection point where in the next few years, we can credibly challenge.
Hey all, Jonathan from GoToHealth. Let me ask, how do you sustain your energy throughout the day? I try to do it with the morning cup of coffee and then one in the afternoon as a pick-me-up, and of course my daily vitamins. But what if I told you I was trying something new that's working for me just great? It provides me with sustained energy and focus, with caffeine for alertness but balanced by amino acids and taurine to prevent jitters or crashes. It also has a blend of B vitamins, L-carnitine, and choline to power my energy and mental clarity even if I didn't get the best night's sleep. It's also packed with vitamins A, C, and E to support my immune health, even with my days of packed schedules. And it's sugar-free and what I'll call flavor-forward. I alternate between 3 delicious flavors: mandarin orange, mango strawberry, and fruit punch. Just 1 small scoop of mix in 8 ounces of water and I'm done. Boom, off to the races. This formula boasts 32 years of brand expertise and thousands of 5-star reviews from millions of users. And it's a woman-owned company. What's this product I'm yakking about? It's called Spark Energy Plus Focus from Advocare. Spark Energy Plus Focus. For GoToHealth listeners, I've scored 30% off and free shipping. Go to drinkspark.com and use code GoToHealth at checkout. That's code GoToHealth at drinkspark.com. Let's tackle the day together with Spark Energy Plus Focus.
The status quo, what I call the legacy institutions of healthcare, and sort of reimagine how healthcare should be delivered and consumed.
Hey everyone, this is Jonathan Marks from GoToHealth. I hope you're having a wonderful day. We have another show for you today. It's one of a series that we're doing on AI in healthcare. AI has tremendous capabilities in terms of dealing with large databases of information and analyzing those databases and spitting out information that can be useful to both doctors and patients as we try to get healthier. However, there are limitations and concerns about legislation and privacy, and how much privacy and legislation we should have around AI, and how AI will affect the workforce and what the workforce does, and even the question of, are we going to be seeing an AI doctor at some point in the future? Our guest today is Ritu Agarwal, PhD MBA. She's the William Pope Carey Distinguished Professor of Information Systems and Health at the Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. She's also the founding co-director of the Center for Digital Health and Artificial Intelligence. She is an expert in the strategic use of information technology, digital transformation of healthcare, health analytics, and artificial intelligence applications in health. She has testified before the National Committee on Health and Vital Statistics and the U.S. Department of Health on research, related to digital technologies and health. She is an appointed member of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases of NIH and has served on the NIH Working Group for Integration of Behavioral and Social Science Research. And as a reminder, please leave us a 5-star review or a thumbs up on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, or wherever you're listening to us if you like what we're sharing. This helps us get the word out to more people. Thanks in advance. So welcome to the show, Ritu Agarwal. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you, Jonathan?
Good. So tell us, Ritu, what is the role of AI in healthcare over the next few years? How will it be used productively to improve health outcomes?
So AI is poised to have a transformative, a remarkable, and unprecedented, choose whatever your preferred superlative is, impact on healthcare in the next few years. And I think right at this moment, we are in the midst of what I would call widespread disruption or creative destruction in the practice of delivery of healthcare. And digital technologies, data analytics, and of course, AI are the central actors in this process. AI has brought us to an inflection point where in the next few years, we can credibly challenge the status quo, what I call the legacy institutions of healthcare, and sort of reimagine how healthcare should be delivered and consumed. So I haven't gotten to the exact answer to your question yet, but that's kind of the setup. Okay, so what do we want the healthcare system to deliver? We want high quality, we want equity in health outcomes across populations, we want access to care when it's needed, and of course, we want lower cost and affordability. And that's our North Star. So these have been some of the persistent challenges that our healthcare system has been suffering from, and not just our healthcare system, but healthcare systems across the world. And, I could spend 15 minutes giving you some alarming statistics, but let me just pick a few choice ones. So we spend $4.3 trillion on healthcare. That's 18% of GDP. And this amount of spending is not sustainable in the long run. And despite this large volume of spending, our healthcare quality is poor. In fact, America's health outcomes are not much better than other developed countries that spend far less. And in some places, we are performing even worse than less developed nations. We rank last in a measure of healthcare access and quality, and our system is rife with errors and delays, diagnostic errors. 12 million Americans per year are affected by them. And then, the final systemic challenge that I want to underscore here in our AI conversation is what I call these data gaps, silos, and interoperability challenges. These data conundrums that don't give us the end-to-end picture of a patient's health history, where we're not able to make the right kinds of treatment decisions or diagnosis decisions, just simply because we don't understand the patient whose data is scattered across so many multiple data sets. So you asked about the role of AI in healthcare. I think there's a lot of hope, optimism, anticipation that AI can help move the needle in a positive direction for some, if not all, of these challenges. So where and how will AI affect healthcare? Across the entire spectrum of healthcare activities and across all players, clinical to administrative, patient-facing to provider-facing, hospitals to pharma companies, outpatient settings, and most strikingly in the hands of patients. I'll give you a couple of examples. Early detection and risk prediction has been one of the areas where AI has produced some pretty striking and remarkable results for image recognition in radiology. Performance of AI algorithms is equal to, if not superior to, experienced radiologists. And just recently, and this will be my last example, it was reported in one of the leading journals that a new AI model is able to predict the risk of 1,000 plus diseases based on a combination of longitudinal medical records and lifestyle factors 20 years in advance. Okay, now that's very, very powerful. So these are, just a handful of ways in which AI has the potential, and I will underscore the word potential, because we're still in a discovery phase. We're still learning where we can apply AI productively, but we have very powerful value propositions.
Very interesting. Thank you for that. So you just mentioned these databases of disease records, and I presume they're anonymous so that people's data is not being shared personally, but that AI can look through huge databases of medical records and, as you just said, predict diseases in advance.
Yeah.
Will this replace clinical trials, or will the data be in clinical real world evidence? I mean, are we going to change the way we, learn about medical knowledge? Right now, our gold standard is clinical trials,
Mhm.
right? But will this change with AI based upon its ability to analyze scores of data sets?
Well, as you know, Jonathan, the ability to analyze, synthesize, find these subtle patterns, find connections, and make sense of extremely large and massive data sets is one of AI's core capabilities. And, humans, including you and I, just can't process these vast troves of data efficiently. And machine learning helps us to surface this deeper insight, if you will. And we think about it as what in our research we call the DIKW transformation, from data to information to knowledge to wisdom. And that's how, by finding these links and connections using AI algorithms, we can generate new medical knowledge. So, perhaps we can use these large databases to find answers to really difficult questions, early warning signs for diseases, which treatments work best for what patients, what drugs are potentially dangerous when used together. But in the short run, clinical trials still remain our gold standard for understanding the causal effects of an intervention on an outcome. Right? So we have very large anonymized collections of data, like the genome-wide association studies, databases that were created after the cracking of a human genome that have led to remarkable advances in drug discovery and remarkable insights on how genetic factors affect the prevalence of disease or individuals' response to certain therapies and so forth. So those are discoveries that perhaps we may not have made with clinical trials because we don't have enough of those large data sets. And clinical trials, remember, are extremely expensive. We're talking about millions and millions of dollars, and that cost too is unsustainable. Nonetheless, we cannot use our real world evidence or real world data as a substitute for clinical trials just yet. We have advanced analytical methods that allow us to find causal relationships between variables in these observational data sets. So we can think of them as a complement rather than a replacement to our traditional methodology of creating new medical knowledge. In the long run, as our analytical methods become more sophisticated, I wouldn't be as bold as to say that it's going to happen in the next 10 to 15 years. The scientific method of that randomized control trial still remains the gold standard. I like to think of it as the metaphor of triangulation. That's what we do when we are trying to find multiple sources of evidence to get us to a truth. So, real world evidence and real world data are complementing what we learn from clinical trials and allowing us to make discoveries where clinical trials are not always feasible, such as for rare diseases, because you're never going to find enough people, perhaps, for a clinical trial who are suffering from a rare disease, or for certain marginalized populations that may not be reflected in the typical participants of a clinical trial. So, not a replacement yet, very much a complement, but both of them working in tandem to get us towards the truth and collectively sort of supporting the veracity of new medical knowledge.
Great. So we've talked about large databases and AI and clinical trials. I want to bring this down to the doctor-patient relationship. How will doctors be able to use AI information either in screening, diagnosis, or treatment with a particular patient in front of them?
So, let me start with sort of the big picture, right? As I think about the relationship between AI and the practice of medicine that doctors engage in, let's think of it as augmentation and decision support and not as replacement or automation. So in the next 5 to 7 years, clinicians will use AI as a second opinion and a workflow assistant because, we're not there at complete automation yet. We don't have enough validation, enough transparency, or integration into the clinical workflow. So if we think about screening, there are point of care alerts. A patient walks in, has some imaging done or has some vitals tested, and the AI analyzes that data and alerts the clinician that the patient who's coming in might possibly be at risk for an adverse condition or might possibly be at risk for a certain disease. So these point of care alerts give the clinician enough information and insight into the patient's health condition even before the clinical encounter starts. We use screening for detecting anomalies as well as for risk stratification. So the Mayo Clinic, for example, has an AI assistant for ECG data that helps with screening for cardiovascular disease. The World Health Organization has endorsed an AI for screening for TB that's widely used the world over. In our own work, we have used electronic health record data to develop an AI model that helps screen pre-diabetic patients for their risk for diabetes. Now think about it, diabetes affects millions of people all across the world, but we don't have a credible way of knowing if somebody's going to progress from pre-diabetes to diabetes and when that transition will occur. Well, our AI model helps identify distinct characteristics of groups of patients who are at low, medium, or high risk. There's also a lot of autonomous screening. Let me get to diagnosis because that is a little bit more interesting and nuanced, right? So all of the screening is happening perhaps independent of the patient-physician interaction. But think about the last time you walked into a clinician's office, right? And let's just assume for a minute that you are suffering from a particular disease. There is a concept called shared decision-making. And what shared decision-making says that a clinician and a patient together collectively, armed with information, make choices about what treatments to use for that patient based on his or her personalized preferences, beliefs, values, whatever. So a patient walks in and has, just pick a disease, AFib, right? The AI provides the clinician with a screening risk stratification even before the patient walks in. The AI analyzes the medical record, evaluates the risk for stroke, presents complications, and gives the clinician right on their screen.
Hey everyone, this is Jonathan from Go2 Health. Here we are in March, and we don't want to think about it, but tax time is coming up. And I always like to say we need to take care of our financial health as well as our physical and mental health. And that's where Monarch software comes in, the all-in-one personal finance tool designed to make our lives easier. Simplify your finances with Monarch. Monarch is the all-in-one personal finance tool designed to make your life easier. It brings your entire financial life, budgeting, accounts and investments, net worth, and future planning together in one dashboard on your phone or your laptop. Feel aware and in control of your finances this tax season and get 50% off your Monarch subscription with code GO2. Your mental health is improved when you can see your entire financial life, budgeting, accounts and investments, net worth, and future planning together in one dashboard on your phone or laptop. I'm reviewing all my revenues and expenses from last year in a beautiful clean dashboard, and I'm about to share it with my accountant to prepare my tax return. That's a great load off my mind. Monarch keeps me focused on planning and hitting financial milestones, not just tracking my spending. Monarch gives me a complete picture, budgets, debt payoff timelines, savings goals, net worth, so I can make decisions that actually move the needle. And surprise, Monarch has all these AI tools built in, offering me 24/7 access to a financial coach, insights into my spending, and weekly recaps so I can stay on track. Monarch keeps me focused on planning ahead and hitting real financial milestones. As a Go-To Health listener, you can ease your mental stress with Monarch. Achieve your financial goals for good with Monarch, the all-in-one tool that makes money management simple. Use code GO2 at monarch.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off at monarch.com, code GO2. Help take the stress out of your life with Monarch.
All of the treatment options that could potentially be appropriate for that patient, and provides perhaps graphical data to show that here's how the risk of a stroke might change with the different treatment options. And the doctor uses this information to start a conversation, presents options, and the patient asks questions, voices concerns. This is an adaptive, dynamic conversation. And it is fully supported by AI that provides the clinician with all of the relevant information that they need right at the point where they're interacting with the patient. So that is, a hugely powerful way to conduct the normal encounter, which lasts only 7 minutes, and where the clinician is looking at their screen a lot of the times. This creates the opportunity for a more meaningful conversation.
So, given that, tell me, what are the limits of AI in decision-making for patient care? What is it that AI can't do? Am I going to be seeing at some point a virtual physician and not a real person?
Yeah.
Tell me about the limits here.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. For starters, AI can't look you in the eye like I'm looking you in the eye, or express empathy, or do anything tactile, or, hold your hand, press it if you're concerned. So again, I want to go back to my decision support or augmentation rather than automation. So, what is AI really good at? AI is good at spotting patterns at scale, making discoveries, but AI is fundamentally a probability engine, right? It finds the most probable cause based on the data that you've trained it with. But doctors engage in what we call counter-probabilistic reasoning. And counter-probabilistic reasoning is, so, a likely cause for Jonathan's complaint is the common cold. But a less probable cause is perhaps something more dangerous. And I can think about that less probable cause as a trained, experienced physician who's had lots and lots of patients walk through their clinic or their office. And I will at least entertain that option as the likely diagnosis for Jonathan. So that type of counter-probabilistic reasoning does not exist in our very narrow artificial intelligence. So AI is not good at establishing causality. Think about it as being brittle at the boundaries. It cannot explain its reasoning. So when you're sitting down with a patient and you're telling them, here's what I think you're suffering from, and the patient asks, well, what is it that leads you to believe that? At least a doctor can walk through all of the factors that led him or her to make that conclusion. AI can't do that very well. So AI does have limits. There are many things that it still can't do. There are some distinctive big concerns about, there's a fundamental mismatch in the approach to reasoning. So AI uses statistical correlations, patterns. Physicians use deductive reasoning, experience, intuition. They understand patients at an individual level much better than an AI can. And, this idea of contextual judgment, this idea that as I'm looking the patient in the eye, and this is my 5th, 6th, 7th, 20th encounter with the patient, I know them so much better than the AI possibly can. So these are, some of the limits.
Hey everyone, this is Jonathan from Go-To Health. Here we are in March, and we don't want to think about it, but tax time is coming up. And I always like to say we need to take care of our financial health as well as our physical and mental health. And that's where Monarch software comes in, the all-in-one personal finance tool designed to make our lives easier. Simplify your finances with Monarch. Monarch is the all-in-one personal finance tool designed to make your life easier. It brings your entire financial life, budgeting, accounts and investments, net worth and future planning together in one dashboard on your phone or your laptop. Feel aware and in control of your finances this tax season and get 50% off your Monarch subscription with code GO2. Your mental health is improved when you can see your entire financial life, budgeting, accounts and investments, net worth, and future planning together in one dashboard on your phone or laptop. I'm reviewing all my revenues and expenses from last year in a beautiful clean dashboard, and I'm about to share it with my accountant to prepare my tax return. That's a great load off my mind. Monarch keeps me focused on planning and hitting financial milestones, not just tracking my spending. Monarch gives me a complete picture, budgets, debt payoff timelines, savings goals, net worth, so I can make decisions that actually move the needle. And surprise, Monarch has all these AI tools built in, offering me 24/7 access to a financial coach, insights into my spending, and weekly recaps so I can stay on track. Monarch keeps me focused on planning ahead and hitting real financial milestones. As a Go-To Health listener, you can ease your mental stress with Monarch. Achieve your financial goals for good with Monarch, the all-in-one tool that makes money management simple. Use code GO2 at monarch.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off at monarch.com, code GO2. Help take the stress out of your life with Monarch.
AI cannot replicate these human qualities. We can't administer the Hippocratic oath to an AI, right? Do no harm. We can administer it to doctors. So we're not at the point yet where an AI is going to walk in and, be the one that's treating you as opposed to your doctor.
I'm exhaling in a sigh of relief. and I think a lot of people listening to the show are doing so too, because am I going to be talking to a virtual doctor at some point? Tell me, Ritu, about data privacy and AI. If we've got these huge databases of medical information, how are we going to maintain privacy?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about here. This is a big and growing area of concern for the public as well as for policymakers. And, the specter of privacy compromises in healthcare is looming really large, and especially with the penetration of predictive AI in healthcare and generative AI in these large language models, AI agents. All of these systems are increasingly being trained on highly sensitive personal information. In healthcare in particular, because the data are so sensitive and because there are so many adverse consequences that could result if your privacy was compromised, the alarm is ringing really, really loud. So I recently read an article which said that the black market for unprotected healthcare information is exploding, and it's being called digital gold, fetching up to $1,000 per medical identity on the dark web.
Wow.
So, what's the way forward? I think we need to revisit how we think about privacy, because we may well derail and stall AI progress. So we need to start by sort of redefining what does patient consent, autonomy, and agency mean in an AI-powered healthcare system. We are used to signing consent agreements when we walk in to a doctor's office, and a HIPAA is the standard consent agreement that we sign. But we need to now think about, okay, what do we consent the patients about? What is the warning that we need to give them? What do we need to tell them about their autonomy and their capability to make their own decisions and to really be the one who's in charge of their healthcare? So we need a lot of patient education. We need policy and legislation. We are currently in a legislative vacuum with respect to data privacy. And, you may know that the Privacy Act of 1974 was sort of the last federal privacy legislation that we signed. And there's a patchwork of sector-specific laws. There's also a patchwork of laws in healthcare that have privacy regulations built into them. But, at this time, it's a little bit caveat emptor, right? We have to be custodians of our own data. We have to be vigilant and thoughtful about what we're sharing data with, who we're sharing data with. I mean, you may have heard and read about press stories where individuals have interacted with healthcare chatbots, and all types of private information has been inadvertently or maliciously relieved. So I'd say that, top professional organizations like the American Medical Association are placing health data privacy, particularly in consumer-facing tools like health apps, front and center in their advocacy efforts. So we need all hands on deck for the protection of health data privacy, all hands on deck, and including ourselves as consumers and patients.
Hey everyone, this is Jonathan from Go2 Health. Here we are in March, and we don't want to think about it, but tax time is coming up. And I always like to say we need to take care of our financial health as well as our physical and mental health. And that's where Monarch software comes in, the all-in-one personal finance tool designed to make our lives easier. Simplify your finances with Monarch. Monarch is the all-in-one personal finance tool designed to make your life easier. It brings your entire financial life, budgeting, accounts and investments, net worth, and future planning together in one dashboard on your phone or your laptop. Feel aware and in control of your finances this tax season and get 50% off your Monarch subscription with code GO2. Your mental health is improved when you can see your entire financial life, budgeting, accounts and investments, net worth, and future planning together in one dashboard on your phone or laptop. I'm reviewing all my revenues and expenses from last year in a beautiful clean dashboard, and I'm about to share it with my accountant to prepare my tax return. That's a great load off my mind. Monarch keeps me focused on planning and hitting financial milestones, not just tracking my spending. Monarch gives me a complete picture, budgets, debt payoff timelines, savings goals, net worth, so I can make decisions that actually move the needle. And surprise, Monarch has all these AI tools built in, offering me 24/7 access to a financial coach, insights into my spending, and weekly recaps so I can stay on track. Monarch keeps me focused on planning ahead and hitting real financial milestones. As a Go2 Health listener, you can ease your mental stress with Monarch. Achieve your financial goals for good with Monarch, the all-in-one tool that makes money management simple. Use code GO2 at monarch.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off at monarch.com, code GO2. Help take the stress out of your life with Monarch. Ritu, you are so terribly knowledgeable in this whole area. I really appreciate it. You are the co-founding director of the Center for Digital Health and Artificial Intelligence at the Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. What are you doing at this center? What are some of the projects you're working on?
Oh my God, Jonathan, I don't know if we have enough time to discuss all the projects, but our mission is to provide evidence to inform the digital transformation of healthcare. And the way we provide evidence is to conduct rigorous research, to train students to be able to become the next healthcare change makers of the future, and to provide recommendations to policymakers who are trying to change our healthcare system towards being more efficient, more equitable, and of higher quality and lower cost. So the research projects that we engage in actually span the entire medical AI deployment cycle, starting with highly technical projects where we look at ways in which data can be organized to make it more accessible to machine learning algorithms, where we actually develop and test algorithms for specific disease conditions like cardiovascular disease and or diabetes, where we look at the impacts of artificial intelligence on medical education, and is it going to hurt or help the next generation of educators, the next generation of practicing professionals. We do studies in the field where we deploy artificial intelligence technologies and we look at how doctors respond to them, whether they adopt the technology, how they are able to successfully change their workflows. We study issues related to privacy, to explainability, to all the other aspects of responsible AI. And then, of course, we also measure what the impact of these technologies are on healthcare outcomes. So I'll go back to my triangulation metaphor again, I think we're all at the discovery phase. We're trying to figure out and find data and evidence that will tell us which AI systems work under what conditions and for whom, so that collectively we have the data, the research, and the evidence needed to really drive this AI-powered transformation forward. So that's what we do at the Center for Digital Health and AI. And important to note that we are a multidisciplinary center because this is not just a technology problem, it's an economics problem, it's an organizational change problem, it's a computer science problem, it's a public health problem, it's a medical problem. So we work with faculty, with researchers, and top scientists across the entire Johns Hopkins ecosystem to bring these multidisciplinary perspectives together and inform our research and improve its quality.
Ritu, you've mentioned legislation a couple of times, and I know you have testified in front of different committees. What, in your opinion, are going to be the major challenges for legislation or legislatures in terms of considering AI in healthcare? Where are the gaps? What are we going to have to deal with as part of legislation over the next decade as AI comes more into healthcare?
There's a tension between regulatory frameworks and legislation and innovation. As a country and as a world, as a global community, we're still trying to decide where we want to put the guardrails around AI and how much we want to legislate during this innovation and discovery phase. Nonetheless, in a sensitive sector like healthcare, legislation is incredibly important because legislation will help us protect the public and patients against any possible adverse consequences or harms that come from AI. So let me give you a couple of examples, right? We have lawsuits against leading health insurers claiming that their automated algorithms that were denying claims were doing so incorrectly in 90% of the cases. We have AI algorithms for predicting suicide. The Veterans Administration built one such algorithm. And as it turns out, this algorithm does not perform very well for women because there weren't enough data about women in the training data sets. We have AI algorithms for disease detection that perform really poorly across marginalized populations because we don't have enough data. So what do we do? In high-risk domains where decisions made by algorithms can have life and death consequences or can have severe financial consequences for individuals, we don't need to put the guardrails in place, right? We need to have legislation which says this is okay to do, but any healthcare company that develops an AI or any government organization or healthcare provider that uses an AI needs to certify that the AI performs at a certain level, needs to certify that these are the checks and balances and guardrails built into the AI. And that's the role of regulation and that's the role of legislation. So we're slowly getting there. There are a few pieces of legislation coming out. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services has put rules in place saying these are things that you cannot do. You should be able to explain the reasoning underlying any decision to accept or deny a healthcare claim. California just introduced a law similar in scope, saying that healthcare providers and insurance companies need to be vigilant about automated decisions and need to be able to provide a rationale or transparency in how these decisions are made. So legislation is important for AI in general, but critically important for a sensitive sector like healthcare. And I would argue, even for financial services.
Ritu, this has been such a helpful session. I really appreciate your expertise, your focus, and sharing that with us today because I know, well, first of all, healthcare is such an important topic, and then AI is such a new overlay into healthcare. It's really, we're going to be dealing with a lot of this, and I know this is your area of specialty. Are there any last big messages you'd like to leave with us today?
I spoke at length about the benefits, and then, I sort of briefly touched upon the risks, transparency, privacy, and so on. There are many other risks of AI that we have to continually be thinking about in healthcare. Safety and security, mentioned bias and fairness, accountability and liability. We don't have the legal framework to say, okay, who's responsible when a medical AI makes a mistake?
Mm-hmm.
I also feel we need to spend a lot of time thinking about how AI can be integrated into the clinical work practices that exist, or do we need to fundamentally reshape those clinical work practices, right? So we have an area of research called implementation science that asks these questions. How will clinical workflow change in the next few decades? How will the practice of medicine change in the next few decades? Let me just throw in synthetic health data into the mix. We talked a lot about healthcare privacy, but why don't we just train our AI models with synthetic data? Implications for the healthcare workforce, what's going to happen to employment and unemployment, and what will our healthcare workforce of the future look like when AI is doing a lot of the work in healthcare, right? These are all topics for future podcasts, Jonathan.
Good. Well, we will come back to you for more. I
Yeah.
really appreciate the expertise and the work that you're doing. I want to thank you for being here with us today, Ritu. It's been very, very informative. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. This was fun.
Good. We've been talking with Ritu Agarwal, PhD, MBA. She's the William Polk Carey Distinguished Professor of Information Systems and Health at the Johns Hopkins Carey Business School. She's also the co-founding director of the Center for Digital Health and Artificial Intelligence. You can learn more if you visit Johns Hopkins Carey Business, and I've created a special link for this. You can go to bit.ly/JHU, that's for Johns Hopkins University, bit.ly/JHU-digital. bit.ly/JHU-digital. Again, Ritu, thanks so much for being with us today. It's a wonderful session. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jonathan. Bye-bye.
Good. So thanks so much for being with us, you, my audience today. If you like what we're doing, please leave us a 5-star review or a thumbs up on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, or wherever you're listening to us. It helps us spread the word. This has been Jonathan Marks with Go to Health. And as we say at the end of every show, go to health. God bless. We'll see you again next time. Take care. Bye. Thank you for tuning in today to Go to Health. You are one of almost 10,000 people per day who enjoy the evidence-based health information offered by our guest health experts. You can watch us on our website and YouTube and listen to us on 8 podcast networks. Be sure to join Jonathan Marks in our upcoming shows each week. If you like our show, please share this episode with your friends and colleagues. You can subscribe to the show, join our email list, send us feedback, browse through the online store, and view our library of over 150 shows at gotohealthmedia.com. See you next time, and remember to elevate your life with Go to Health. Hey everyone, this is Jonathan from Go to Health. Here we are in March, and we don't want to think about it, but tax time is coming up. And I always like to say we need to take care of our financial health as well as our physical and mental health. And that's where Monarch software comes in, the all-in-one personal finance tool designed to make our lives easier. Simplify your finances with Monarch. Monarch is the all-in-one personal finance tool designed to make your life easier. It brings your entire financial life, budgeting, accounts and investments, net worth, and future planning together in one dashboard on your phone or your laptop. Feel aware and in control of your finances this tax season and get 50% off your Monarch subscription with code GO2. Your mental health is improved when you can see your entire financial life, budgeting, accounts and investments, net worth, and future planning together in one dashboard on your phone or laptop. I'm reviewing all my revenues and expenses from last year in a beautiful clean dashboard, and I'm about to share it with my accountant to prepare my tax return. That's a great load off my mind. Monarch keeps me focused on planning and hitting financial milestones, not just tracking my spending. Monarch gives me a complete picture, budgets, debt payoff timelines, savings goals, net worth, so I can make decisions that actually move the needle. And surprise, Monarch has all these AI tools built in, offering me 24/7 access to a financial coach, insights into my spending, and weekly recaps so I can stay on track. Monarch keeps me focused on planning ahead and hitting real financial milestones. As a Go-To Health listener, you can ease your mental stress with Monarch. Achieve your financial goals for good with Monarch, the all-in-one tool that makes money management simple. Use code GO2 at monarch.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off at monarch.com, code GO2. Help take the stress out of your life with Monarch.
Mom, can you tell me a story?
Sure. Once upon a time, a mom needed a new car.
Was she brave?
She was tired, mostly. But she went to Carvana.com and found a great car at a great price. No secret treasure map required.
Did you have to fight a dragon?
Nope, she bought it 100% online. From her bed, actually.
Was it scary?
Honey, it was as unscary as car buying could be.
Did the car have a sunroof?
It did, actually.
Okay, good story.
Car buying you'll want to tell stories about. Buy your car today on
Carvana.
Delivery fees may apply.